Before I start my story, I'd like to say that I'm okay and 100% intact. That might mean a little bit more in a few minutes. So I'm going to take you back to September 2019. Start of a new school year. Didn't think anything of it. Pre-COVID. One morning, I am in the bathroom, getting ready, looking in the mirror, and I happen to notice that the side of my head, right about here on my temple, was touching the side of my glasses. So I'm like, oh, I wonder what that is. Go speak to my wife, who's sitting right over there, and she's like, hey, you should get that checked out. So I go down to an urgent care who quickly refers to me to a dermatologist. That went by pretty quick. They really didn't find anything, and they said, just keep an eye on it. Everything will be fine. Well, luckily, that was another opportunity for my wife to come in and say, I don't think I like that. Let's get it checked out at a different doctor. So I then made my way to our general doctor, because we would do for checkup anyway, still the beginning of September. And he did not have the same reaction. He's like, that doesn't look right. We got to get that looked at. So quickly, a number of tests were ordered. I was being sent for CAT scan. CAT scan did not come back good. Went back to the doctor and quickly was told, you gotta prepare for the worst right now. Sorry, this is not as light as a story as Jared's and Leeton's. Not also a good thing to hear from that doctor. We're not really fans of him anymore. But things did end up coming back really quick. The doctor, who wasn't the best as far as his bedside manner, had good connections. Sent us to a neurosurgeon the next day. I walk in and meet Dr. Ronit Galat. She ended up becoming my neurosurgeon. First thing she said to me was, what do you know about what's going on? And I'm like, nothing. I don't feel weird. I can see fine. My head doesn't hurt. Everything feels okay, except I was just told I was going to die. And my wife and I are not feeling very good about that, as you would imagine. So she said, is there anything else you could tell me? So I had a blood test on me. I showed her the results of my blood test, and she quickly looked at it and said, you know, it doesn't look like anything's wrong here. Has anyone ever shown you your scan? And I said, no. So she opens up my scan on her computer, goes through it, and basically feels the same way as my doctor and saying, this does not look good. But you know what? It doesn't look like the 35 forms of cancer that your doctor thought you had, because your blood test doesn't point that way. So that made me feel kind of like a little bit weird. And again, she said, can you tell me anything else? So I was like, I have nothing to say. So then, this was a weird one. She asks for my phone. So I hand her my phone, and she opened up my pictures and started flicking through pictures of me. Thankfully, not all of my pictures. I was able to click myself on Google Photos. And she was flicking for a little while, kind of nodding, and looked up and said to me, you're going to be okay. And I was like, just like that? I'm going to be okay? I said, I've never thought a doctor would ever say that, especially today, after I was not going to be okay yesterday. So that was really like a relief, but I said, you have to tell me what's going on here. So she said, your head looks the same going back almost 2 years. If you had cancer, it would be eating through your face right now. So I was like, wow, that's good. But what is it? She said, I have no idea what it is yet, but whatever it is, it's not going to kill you. And you're going to have a long road ahead of you, but things are going to work out. So that felt really good. She scheduled me for a biopsy a week later. I was able to go home and see my mom and tell the rest of my family that I was going to be okay. I was very much dreading the thought of talking to my mother about not being okay. She had just got back from a trip from Tennessee. So I felt really good now, and I didn't really know why, and it was still something I was very cautious about, but I was home waiting for this biopsy. A week later, had the biopsy done, saw the doctor again, and she's like, "You have a tumor growing in the bone tissue of your skull, but it's not cancer. And like I said, you have a long road ahead of you because we're going to have to cut it out." Again, this is still September. They were going to need some time to plan everything. Everything was planned. She came back and said, "We're probably going to have the surgery around October, November." At that point, I was like, I'm going to go back to school. I want to start living my life again. I went back to school. My wife was okay with that. And everything was good. I talked to my students about it. They were all very supportive. I started telling them what was going on, showed them my scan, which is kind of weird. But over the next couple of months, it was like a puzzle came about. My doctor introduced me to a team of surgeons that were going to help me. And it was myself, Dr. Gilad, the neurosurgeon, a plastic surgeon who was not there to make me look pretty. He was there to put back my head after they pulled it apart. And a head and neck surgeon who was going to assist in removing the bad tissue. I got to talking to them about what I do. Gaster said, or Jared, I'm sorry, Nissa. I teach engineering. A little bit of biomedical engineering, a little bit of mechanical engineering, a little bit of architecture. The biomedical engineering part was about to come up very ironically. So I said, what's going to happen here? What are we going to do? And they very quickly started talking about two options. One was the option was to 3D print the portions of my skull that were about to be removed. So I was like, that sounds really cool. Is that going to hurt? No, it's not. In fact, it's going to work really well. So I said, what's the other option? The other option was not good. It was to take apart a piece of my leg and then put my skull back together with pieces of my leg on the table the day of my surgery. So I said, I don't think I'm going to look right when that's over. And Dr. Culliford, the plastic surgeon, said no, but it would be like the best for you, medically speaking. So I said, wait a minute. 3D printing, I like the sound of that. I'm familiar with that. I do that in my classroom. Tell me more about that. So he started telling me about this stuff, and it was really interesting to hear because it was everything I expected. I was able to know and expect what they were going to be doing, and I was more comfortable with that. He told me there was a very low chance of my body rejecting these implants. Went back to school, got to tell my class all that stuff. That was pretty cool too. I had no fear, I don't know why, no fear of the surgery. I was looking forward to it. I was looking forward to it being over. And in November, I ended up going in for that surgery. It was going to be a one-day surgery, but 12 hours, just a blink for me, terrible for my family, but just a blink. The day of my surgery, I was wheeled into the operating room, very frightening because they hadn't put me out yet. And the doctor pulled a box out, and in it was a model of my skull. So I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. Where did that come from? She said that the company that printed my implant wanted to give it to the doctors to help plan the surgery, and that was like a normal thing. But usually they throw it out. So she promised she was going to give it to me after the surgery, and she did, which was pretty cool. Had the surgery, everything went well. I started my potential 6-week recovery. After 6 weeks, it started not going well. I had a couple of complications. It led to 2 more surgeries and another piece of my skull removed. So this is the part of my skull that I had the implant put in from where the tumor was. But I had a bleed 6 weeks later in this part of my head, and they had to remove this part of my skull too, and then put another implant in. So, like I was saying, 2 more surgeries to fix everything from the complications, and then one more all the way in March to put that last implant in. March, just before the world exploded with COVID. So everything kind of turned out good for me because I was going to be home anyway. I missed a lot of school, but that was okay too. Got a lot of help from MFA in that way too, so thank you. And everything was great. But I'm home and I'm spending a lot of time thinking, what am I going to do when I get back? I really want to get back. Things are finally going well. I feel good. Let me go to the hospital and get my data. So my wife took me to the hospital for one of our checkups. Everything was going well. We stopped in the medical records area, filled out a form. I got my medical data on a disc, including all of my scans, all my CT scans, all my MRIs, all of that data that I was about to go home. I put it in my computer, and within minutes, I had my scan on the screen, and I used some software to create a digital 3D model of my own skull. So I was like, this is weird, because it doesn't look very good. But I was able to see it before the surgery, then after the first surgery, and then after the second, and after the third, and then right before the fourth, which is when I was kind of gearing up to all that stuff. I started playing around with it, and I'm saying, I could do something with this. And by the time I was ready to go back to work, which was not going to happen then because of COVID, I said, I'm going to 3D print my skull. I was able to go back to work remotely because of the school being shut down, but not really be in the building. My doctor wouldn't allow it anyway. But in the summer, I was able to get back in the building, got right over to my computer, and I set that 3D print going. Those of you who are not familiar with 3D printing, it's a very long, excruciating process. So I set it going 72 hours later, after watching it a few minutes here and there, put a webcam on it to watch it too. And I walked over to the build plate. I'm not a prop comic, but I did bring my skull. And I plucked it off the plate, and I said, wow, that's not right. But still pretty cool. And then I would kind of like feel around a little bit and say, yeah, I'm okay. And I thought I was going to be like all excited, but still, it was really like not the greatest moment, to be honest, because it was weird that everything just did not look right on my head. But in September, when I got back in the building, I was able to show everybody. And I knew that if someone asked me that special question, what are we going to use this for in our lives? All I had to do was hold this up. And that's all I wanted to do. And I said, this is real. This is me. And I was able to take my skull, use that digital version of this, hand it out to my students, and now it's a project in my class. And I'm like, it's your turn to fix me now. Because it's like a really good experience, and it's not easy, let me tell you that. Really a lot of credit to the doctors, because I still look normal, sort of. And I mostly feel normal too. So I really am a very lucky man to be here. Thankful to my wife, who saved my life countless times at the sacrifice of taking care of the kids. And thankful to the doctors who were so accessible and so intelligent to come up with this, a custom fix for me that was not made out of my leg. That was a really good feeling. I calculated that about 10% of my skull is artificial. So now I can say that I identify as a cyborg. That, with these cool scars that I have, which I refuse to use the scar cream on, make me feel like this experience was a completely net positive experience. Thanks.